to a UNHCR podcast on the prevention of gender-based violence. Join us as we explore the innovative work from the front lines of our operations globally. Get inspired from partner organizations who created leading GBV prevention program models. I am your host, Maria Paula Castaneda, UNHCR Talent Learning and Development Officer. Today's episode focuses on empowering adolescent girls in humanitarian settings with a focus on the Girl Shine program model. Here with me today is Mehreen Jaswal, Senior Adolescent Girls Specialist at the International Rescue Committee, IRC. Mehreen developed IRC's program model, Girl Shine. She is based in the UK. We also have today Kazi Afroja Ali Rainy, currently an Associate GBV Officer in Mozambique, but Rainy was previously based in Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh, where she implemented Girl Shine. A big welcome to both of you. Many thanks for being here today. So let's jump right in. I would like to start our conversation talking about adolescent girls in humanitarian settings. What is so critical about adolescent girls, and especially in humanitarian settings? Mehreen, do you want to start? Do you have any insights for us?
Yes, thank you so much. Really good question. So adolescence in general is a critical stage in our lives. The growth and development that takes place during this time is immense. There's a lot happening for adolescents, exploring identity, boundaries, changes in the body. It can be an exciting but also overwhelming time. If you couple that with gender norms and restrictions that girls face once they enter adolescence, it can feel very isolating and confusing. All of a sudden, the things that girls were allowed to do previously, they cannot anymore because they are perceived to be women and they are expected to modify their behavior. Girls may be tasked with additional responsibilities, face stricter expectations, have restrictions on their movement, experience increased control over their behavior and actions, and also face increased violence. This combination of gender and age discrimination means that adolescent girls are at a double disadvantage. Add to that conflict or displacement, and you have a situation on your hands that puts girls in a vulnerable position where they are targeted for violence. And research highlights that adolescent girls in humanitarian settings are particularly targeted with exploitation and violence. Girls can become isolated in these situations, be restricted to the home, and lack access to understandable information about their health, their rights, existing services, which means they cannot seek help if they experience violence. Early marriage in humanitarian settings is also a significant issue, and growing evidence shows that in times of humanitarian crisis, early marriage rates increase with a disproportionate impact on girls. Early marriage puts girls at risk of multiple forms of gender-based violence throughout their lives. And it's important to say that despite the challenges and risks that these girls face, these girls are also leaders, activists, creators, and more. And adolescent girls across the world have demonstrated that they have what it takes to make meaningful change despite navigating all of this within the foundations and structures of patriarchy.
Thank you, Mehreen. That was really insightful. And I really like how you highlighted the strengths that adolescent girls have amidst these challenges because of their specific conditions. So thank you. And Rainy, I want to ask you, since you're working directly with adolescent girls in Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh, could you maybe speak a bit more to your work there with adolescent girls?
Yeah, sure, Maria. Thank you for your question. So, in Bangladesh, where I work here, adolescent girls are facing unique challenges related to displacement, poverty, and gender-based violence. According to the information management system of the gender-based violence and child protection subsector, so these Rohingya adolescent girls are no exception to these global trends and face risks of exploitation and violence related to their sex and age. Adolescent girls in these Rohingya refugee camps, they are facing a range of risks, including gender-based violence, early marriage, and this limited access to education and healthcare as well. Child marriage is prevalent in here as well. in this Rohingya community, with some girls also getting married as young as 30 years old. And this early marriage also puts girls at risk of dropping out of school, experience domestic violence, and facing complication related to early pregnancies. So if I give you a more depth here, adolescent girls in the Rohingya refugee camps also faces challenges related to their sexual and reproductive health because they have limited access to sexual and reproductive health services, including family planning, alternative care, and safe abortion. So this situation puts girls at risk of unintended pregnancies, unsafe abortion, and maternal mortality. Another risk factor for adolescent girls in the Rohingya refugee camp, they are also at risk of rape, sexual assault, and harassment, both within and outside their household. So this is why they are at risk of facing exploitation and trafficking. In my observation, I have also seen that many girls are here also forced to take on adult responsibilities without the necessary skills or knowledge, which can actually have lasting impact on their physical and mental health, education, and overall well-being.
Thank you, Rainy, for this insight on the challenges and risks that adolescent girls face in the Rohingya refugee camps specifically. So we understand a bit, the context of adolescent girls and the vulnerability that they face. Mehreen, I'm wondering if you could tell us a bit more about Girl Shine, which is an IRC program model focusing on adolescent girls. We would love to hear more about the background of Girl Shine and about the program itself.
Yeah, sure. So Girlshine emerged from years of IRC programming on adolescent girls. There were various early iterations, shall we say, of Girlshine, which went by many different names, but essentially covering the same aspects that Girlshine does today, such as safe spaces, life skills curriculum, mentors, engaging caregivers, and community engagement. The need was really driven by our teams on the ground who identified adolescent girls aged 10 to 19 at high risk of gender-based violence and needed support on how to engage and program for them. So two of our adolescent girls programs were rigorously evaluated in Liberia, Democratic Republic of Congo, Pakistan, and Ethiopia. Based on the findings of these evaluations, inputs from technical experts, insights from our teams on the ground, and feedback from adolescent girls themselves, we developed Girlshine. So Girlshine is a program model and resource package that seeks to support, protect, and empower adolescent girls in humanitarian settings, and it's informed by feminist approaches. The model intends to facilitate a safe space for girls to come together, a space that is conscious about patriarchal norms and actively challenges them. Girlshine aims to cultivate a space that lets girls know that they are not to blame for any violence inflicted on them, a space that builds on girls' power and potential, and a space that encourages girls to think about how they want to shape their own futures. And we've also recently added new resources to Girlshine to specifically address the issue of early marriage in humanitarian settings as well.
Great. Thank you, Mehreen. No, and it's really interesting to see how the program model addresses the specific needs of adolescent girls and addresses the ecological model to also include, the community's involvement in empowering adolescent girls. So thank you. And Rainy, I understand that in Bangladesh, in your operation, you are implementing this program model, Girl Shine. Could you maybe give us a bit of insight on what the implementation of Girl Shine looks like in Bangladesh?
So yes, that's true actually. So here actually we are also implementing this Galshan program because we find it's a very important program, can play a very critical role targeting these adolescent girls. So through this program, we provide education and life skill training to girls aged 10 to 19 with the goal of building their confidence and equipping them with the tools they need to respond to and prevent of gender-based violence and to make informed decision about their futures. And to be honest, we have found that this program not only helps to improve the well-being of the girl themselves, but also has a positive ripple effect in their communities and families.
Great, thank you. I actually have a follow-up question for either of you because you mentioned that the program model talks about life skills, providing education and life skills training to girls age 10 to 19, which is this, the age group for adolescent girls. I don't know, Mehreen or Rainy, could you speak a bit more to what life skills looks like for adolescent girls?
Yeah, sure. So there are a number of different topics that we touch upon through the life skills content that we do with adolescent girls. A lot of this content is focused on providing girls with some key skills, knowledge, and information when it comes to decision making, problem solving, navigating relationships, understanding basics around their sexual and reproductive health. We cover sessions around trust building, developing social connections. And we also cover topics related to visioning for the future, helping girls to think a little bit more long term. And all of these different topics combine together to give girls like a comprehensive package of learning that will help them to navigate critical issues that they face. So it's quite comprehensive, both in terms of looking at specific topics, like I said, around sexual reproductive health and safety, but then on the broader level, it's really looking at developing their social and emotional skills.
Great. No, thanks. It's really, that's really insightful to think about, the skills that adolescent girls need in that specific point in their lives. I mean, I'm wondering, Mayreen, would you say that the Girl Shine program then targets GBV prevention or GBV response or both? Because we've seen how you're already addressing early marriage. So maybe you could give us a bit more insight there as well.
So Girlshine works on the premise that both GBV prevention and GBV response arms are addressed. The intended outcome of Girlshine is the improved prevention and response to gender-based violence against adolescent girls in humanitarian settings. And while the Girlshine resources themselves are more heavily focused on GBV prevention, Girlshine can only be implemented in situations where GBV services are already established and are accessible to adolescent girls. And by this, we mean that staff are trained to support girls who experience GBV and girls feel comfortable accessing the services. And so we have resources in Girlshine that are targeted towards GBV service providers to help strengthen the response element of the program. And then we have lots of content in the life skills curriculum for adolescent girls when it comes to the GBV prevention and seeking support. It's really important to say that when we're working on adolescent girls GBV prevention programming, such as programs like Girlshine, it's really essential not to imply that it's an adolescent girl's responsibility to prevent GBV. However, girls will have increased knowledge to be able to identify whether they are at risk of or exposed to GBV. They will know how to access available GBV services, and they will also be able to identify someone to turn to if they experience or are threatened by violence. Additionally, girls will gain an understanding of the range of services available to them beyond GBV services to help them secure a full range of their rights. And so Girlshine really focuses on these elements. Girlshine also engages with female and male caregivers who strive to be supportive and positive influences in girls' lives, and they have a role to play in preventing GBV that girls face, as well as supporting them to seek services. So these are the areas that we're really looking at when we're talking about Girlshine.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for clarifying a bit. Now, I want to ask you both because when we talk about the settings that we work with, they're often, very conservative settings. And both of you have already mentioned the barriers that adolescent girls face in accessing sexual and reproductive health. So, based on the fact that Girl Shine involves so many kind of discussing with adolescents themselves, how do you discuss with adolescent girls in conservative settings the topic of sexual and reproductive health? Mehreen, maybe could you give us an overview? of the program model. And then Rainy, if you could after provide any insights on how you're doing this in practice in Bangladesh, would be really interesting to hear.
Yep, sure. So this question comes up a lot, and in every training we do on Girlshine, these topics around sexual and reproductive health are the ones that participants feel the most uncomfortable with. There is a lot of concern about how these sessions will be accepted, if there will be backlash in the community, and these are very valid concerns. But in addition to this, I think it's really important that we reflect on our own biases or assumptions when it comes to delivering this content to adolescent girls. So Girlshine has tried to address some of these challenges by putting in place many mechanisms to support the teams to deal with some of the challenges that they will come across. So, for example, the outreach and trust building component in Girlshine is very comprehensive, and this is critical to be able to deliver this content. If the community see you as a credible and trusted organization, they will be less likely to challenge you on giving this information to girls, because they will know that the information that you are providing is factual and credible. In addition, we've developed sessions that can be done with caregivers to introduce them to these topics so that they know in broad terms the content that we will be delivering with girls, and they'll also have the opportunity to ask questions and raise any concerns. We also ask caregivers how they would feel comfortable with this content being delivered to girls. So, for example, do they want a health professional to deliver it? Would they like to be trained to deliver it themselves? Mostly they are happy for us to do it once we've had these sessions with them and if the trust is there. And when we explain to them the importance of covering this information with girls, they're more accepting. I think the challenge comes when we try to give this information to girls and we haven't informed caregivers that will be covering these topics, and there's a lot of miscommunication and misunderstanding around what is actually being delivered. For the girls themselves, you will see that sexual and reproductive health sessions come after the module that we have on trust building, the module that we have on social emotional skills. It's built into the curriculum kind of somewhere in the middle. And this is intentional because we want to give enough time to build trust with the girls first, ensure that they're comfortable with each other, and ensure that they're comfortable with the facilitator before we deliver this content. And so the reason for this is that once that trust is built, these girls will get more out of these sessions, and they'll also feel more at ease to ask the questions that they have. Finally, the way the content is delivered really determines its success. So the mentors and facilitators need to be trained both on the technical content as well as the facilitation approach. And we cover this in the Girlshine training for mentors and facilitators. And we really focus in on those assumptions and biases that I initially mentioned. So really looking at how facilitators can facilitate this content in a way where girls don't feel judged, where they feel like all of their questions are valid, and also, ensuring that facilitators, while they may not be experts on this topic, can find ways to get the answers that girls are looking for, and to feel comfortable to say to girls, like, I don't have this answer right now, but I'll come back to you. And so we really work with mentors on these pieces. And I think the thing to really remember is that these mentors and facilitators may be the only entry point that girls have for this information that is accurate, because girls will be getting this information from other places, and we don't know how accurate the information is that they're receiving. And so really, this is one of the few places where they might be able to receive accurate information in a way that is non-judgmental. And these topics can be really life-saving. So even in the most conservative context, we have to find ways to prioritize this information. And plus, it's always one of the top topics requested by girls across all contexts. So it's definitely an area that girls are really interested in having more information about.
Thank you, Mehreen. And I think, what you say really speaks to how well this program is adapted to the specific needs of adolescent girls, because As you say, it's something that they're requesting. It's something that they're experiencing, the topic of sexual and reproductive health, in a way that is different than if they were adult women. And it's a good reminder also that you say that the challenges with addressing such a difficult subject in a conservative community come not only from the wider community itself, but also, internalized biases that the adolescent girls may have themselves. So, the way that you speak about different entry points and how to adapt the facilitation is also really interesting. How, the context here matters a lot, and the trust. And Rainy, we're really interested to hear in Bangladesh, how you are introducing this topic, sexual and reproductive health, which, as Mehreen reminded us, can really be life-saving information.
Yeah, and I also agree with what Marin stated, and the majority of the approach that we have also implemented in our Bangladesh operation. So, Maria, as you are aware that this Rohingya community holds very conservative views when it comes to sexual and reproductive health. So, we have actually adopted a different approach uh, to more accessible and engaging for adolescent girls in the camps. So, by involving caregivers and families in the conversation, we are always trying to overcome cultural barriers and ensure that girls receive the necessary support. Additionally, we also use interactive and participatory methods to make the discussion of sexual and reproductive health more engaging for adolescent girls. This includes also involving midwives to facilitate session, especially the session of sexual and reproductive health, where midwives are explaining the importance of sexual reproductive health and why it is relevant to their girl's life. And we also provide extensive training to the girls and facilitator so that they can ensure that the discussion are contextualized and culturally appropriate. And the facilitator also use a range of interactive and participatory activities to engage the girls in the discussion. They also play games that help them learn about the different parts of the reproductive system, and also they participated saying no to unwanted advance or any kind of such situations. We also use peer-to-peer approach where older girls act as a mentor and role models for younger girls. And this approach also creates a supportive and empowering environment where girls feel comfortable sharing their thoughts and questions.
Rainy, that's really, it's great how you saw the entry points and how best to build trust among the adolescent girls in your context, and you identified midwives specifically on the topic of sexual and reproductive health, and this peer-to-peer approach where it's true that, yeah, I mean, putting myself in the shoes of an adolescent girls, having maybe an older girl as a mentor would be so powerful. So thanks for sharing. Now, I also wanted to ask both of you about, how do you support adolescent girls to seek GBV services through Girl Shine? Because I can imagine that as trust is built, right? And then maybe not in the very beginning, but especially as you mentioned, Mehreen, as you start introducing the topics of sexual and reproductive health, the disclosures of incidents of GBV probably also increase. So how do you support adolescent girls to seek GBV services?
Through that question, you're really getting at the heart of what Girl Shine aims to do. GBV services for girls are absolutely critical. And I think when we look at the global situation of violence against girls, the statistics are really staggering. Every 10 minutes somewhere in the world, an adolescent girl dies as a result of violence. Globally, nearly 1 in 3 adolescent girls aged 15 to 19 have been victims of physical, emotional, or sexual violence perpetrated by their husbands or partners. And early marriage disproportionately affects women and girls, with 12 million girls marrying each year. So the situation is really critical. And so Dedicated GBV programs for girls are absolutely life-saving and critical to any humanitarian or development program. For Girls Shine, it's essential that GBV services are in place and accessible to girls, because we're doing a lot of work with adolescent girls, like you said, through Girls Shine, we are getting more GBV disclosures. And so it's really important that girls have somewhere to go to receive the support once they do disclose that they've experienced GBV. And so it's essential that these GBV services are accessible to girls. And by accessible, we want to ensure that staff have been trained on key concepts on supporting girls through the case management process. For example, receiving training on caring for child survivors, or how to create adolescent girl-friendly services, checking whether girls feel comfortable accessing the safe space, and checking whether girls know what services the safe space and case management offers. For example, is this explained in girl-friendly ways? So no Girl Shine intervention would ever take place without established and accessible GBV services. And so that's really, really critical to consider. Then within Girl Shine itself, in the life skills curriculum, we have a module dedicated to GBV through our safety module. And a lot of the work that we do in the earlier modules of Girl Shine is to really get us to this point of being able to tackle these issues. And, we've seen in the past when we brought these topics into early, girls don't necessarily engage with them in the same way. So it's the trust element, again, is super critical to allow girls to fully engage with this topic. And so within the safety module, we tackle some of the key GBV issues that girls face. We help them to identify types of GBV. We support them in knowing how to access GBV services. We also cover topics such as healthy relationships and unhealthy relationships, explore power dynamics within relationships. We also cover victim blaming. Again, going back to your previous point, Maria Paula, around internalized biases and so on, we see that oftentimes girls might blame themselves or other girls for the violence that they face. So we do cover this topic in some depth, so that girls know that they're never to blame for the violence they experience. And then we also work with them to identify key safety risks as well. We invite caseworkers to join some of these safety sessions as well, so girls can become familiar with the caseworkers in the safe space, so that they can feel that there's a personal connection instead of just, like a name of someone, but they know who that person is. If they need to access case management services, they already have a face to put to that name. And we use a lot of interactive games and storytelling to talk about these very sensitive topics. And we do this so that girls don't feel like the questions or the scenarios that we're covering are directed at them as individuals. And then we work really closely with the mentors and facilitators, especially through the training, to support them on how to deal with the GBV disclosures, especially in group settings, and how they can do that in a sensitive way that doesn't make the girl feel singled out, and to ensure that confidentiality also remains within the group as well.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mehreen. And Rainy, I'm wondering in Bangladesh, how does the implementation of this aspect of the program apply, the access to GBV services for adolescent girls that are engaged in the Girl Shine program?
So I have been engaged with this Girl Shine program in Bangladesh since its beginning, and have personally observed that this Girl Shine program is really empower adolescent girls by providing them with the education and abilities to prevent and address gender-based violence. So here we conduct group session that focus on various topics, as Mehreen mentioned, like a different kind of topics, including safety session. So when we are conducting this kind of session, we also introduce them about the reporting mechanism, different type of violence which they can face, and also referral pathway which actually exists in available in the camp. So apart from this session, we also provide one-on-one counseling session for girls who may have experienced or are at risk of gender-based violence, and also introduce them to gender-based violence case management services so that they can seek services if they're required. Like if I bring one of a practical example, during one of the safety session, so the girls were educated on identifying spaces that are safe and those that are not safe, and also were given information on practical measure to prevent gender-based violence. So in this session they were also made aware of areas that could potentially pose a risk for such incidents and how to stay safe in those situations. Apart from that, in here, we also work closely with caregivers to ensure that they are also aware of the risks and challenges faced by adolescent girls in the camp, and also they can support their daughters in seeking services when needed. So, by building this confidence and skill of adolescent girls and their caregivers, we really try to create a safer and more supportive environment for girls here.
No, thanks to both of you. And, what I really take away also is how the model and these contextual adaptations really look at how to best reach adolescent girls. So, both of you mentioned girl-friendly information, storytelling, interactive games. The way, Rainy, you mentioned how the girls themselves are mapping what is safe and not in their community is really interesting. And then also, I really also take away the support that you provide to the adults in these girls' lives, or older adolescent girls if they're mentors, the mentors, the caregivers, the caseworkers, the midwives in supporting these disclosures and then maybe even future needs to seek GBV services. So thank you for that. I understand that, and it's come up a bit in our conversation, that an important part of the Girl Shine program model is engaging caregivers. So, Mehreen, why? Why is it such an important part of Girl Shine, engaging caregivers, and how do you do it?
I want to start just by saying that engaging caregivers always comes up as a challenge in Girls Shine, especially engaging male caregivers. And so we often hear that it's really tricky to engage caregivers, and they're not available to participate and so on. And we've not always historically prioritized caregiver engagement and have kind of worked with girls alone or just worked with the mothers. But what we have found over time is this has really created challenges for programming with girls, and there's lots of evidence that also points to this, which is if you're not working across the ecological model, i.e., working with girls, their caregivers, the community, and so on, programming will have less impact. And so we've really tried to address this through Girl Shine by providing multiple options for engaging with caregivers. So what we strive for in Girl Shine is to engage caregivers in the caregiver curriculum that we have. And this is where we see real change when it comes to caregivers' attitudes and beliefs around gender norms, and also improvements in their relationships with adolescent girls, which are all critical pathways to violence reduction. Also, engaging the caregivers in the curriculum creates a safe space for girls to practice what they've learned in the sessions at home. And without doing this, we could be doing more harm. We have to think about the fact that, in the life skills curriculum, as I mentioned before, we're really bringing girls together to think about gender norms and how to challenge some of these pieces. We're really empowering them by helping them know what their rights are. Now, if they're getting all of this information in the space and they're going home to an environment where their caregivers are not up to speed, or don't hold the same attitudes and beliefs that they do, we're potentially putting girls in a risky situation where caregivers might start questioning what they're learning and try to restrict girls further. So that's really important to create an environment where girls can really practice what they've learned at home. Additionally, we cannot work with girls alone, given their age and also the nature of the power dynamics with caregivers. We have to engage with caregivers. And we know that if we don't work with the key decision makers in girls' lives, we really cannot effect change for girls. But we also recognize that the contexts that we work in are varied, and there are credible challenges when it comes to engaging with caregivers, especially in a curriculum that's like 14 or 16 sessions long. And so we have provided options to engage caregivers in Girlshine through one-off activities or through a shorter set of discussions covering key topics. So we've weaved in flexibility in there so that teams can engage caregivers in multiple ways. It's really important to say that working with caregivers gives us access to girls. It improves relationships between girls and caregivers to ensure that girls feel comfortable to turn to their caregivers if they experience violence. And these are all really important pathways to violence reduction. And not working with caregivers, as we have seen in the past when we haven't prioritized this engagement, it will lead to backlash in the community, and it will make programming for adolescent girls very challenging. So it's really essential that we engage caregivers through Girlshine.
Thanks, Mehreen. And Rainy, I'm wondering, in your experience, Mehreen spoke a little bit about the risks of not engaging with caregivers, but also the risks of maybe, if not done properly, how it could further harm the adolescent girls. So, the importance of really making sure all the conditions are ready to engage with caregivers. So what has been your experience in Bangladesh, Rainy, in this this piece on engaging caregivers of adolescent girls?
Thank you, Maria, for asking this question. So, what Mehreen mentioned, one thing I really like this thing that we actually can't work alone with adolescent girls. We must need to engage them because caregivers are important in this program because this caregiver play a significant role in supporting the adolescent girls' life. So, in the Girlshine program of our UNHCR operation, we have two curriculums that work together to empower adolescent girls and create a safer environment for them. One of them, which Mehreen mentioned, is the life skill curriculum, which focuses on empowering the girls with knowledge and skills. And other curriculum is called that caregiver curriculum, which is equally important because it addresses broader issue of gender inequality within the family structure with the goal of impacting girls' experience of gender-based violence inside the home. So the caregiver curriculum is designed this way, and we also contextualize this program so that it can improve the understanding of both female and male caregivers about adolescent girls' specific needs and how to provide a supportive environment during this transition period. So when we enroll adolescent girls in the Girlshine program, we also enroll their male and female caregiver in the session. And the caregiver receive 40 sessions that are designed to bring about meaningful change in their attitudes and behaviors toward adolescent girls. So we take this session in parallel with the curriculum which offered to adolescent girls. Like if I just bring one example, before we introduce girls to new concept like relationship, puberty and safety, we first conduct the same session with the caregivers. So this approach ensures that caregivers are able to provide a supportive environment to girls once they start being introduced to new concept. So by engaging caregivers, we really try to create a more inclusive and supportive environment for adolescent girls where they can actually reach their full potential.
Great, thank you. That's really insightful on the way you engage caregivers. Thank you. So Mehreen, I have a question now for you about the impact of Girlshine. You've mentioned a bit, the history of this program and how it's been implemented in different contexts, but how would we know that this program has had an impact?
So we've been able to measure our impact in a number of ways through impact evaluations, monitoring and evaluation data, and testimonies from participants. We've done 2 rigorous evaluations on previous iterations of Girl Shine, and through those evaluations, we found improvements in mothers' parenting style, with mothers being warmer and more accepting of their daughters, and also mothers recognizing the importance of education and the harmful effects of early marriage. We saw increased access to female mentors that girls could talk to, improved social networks for girls, and we also saw a decrease in the likelihood of early marriage, and a decrease in risky sexual practices, and also improved condom use. And we also saw through these evaluations improved gender equality norms. So these are all really critical pathways to reduce violence. We also know through our M&E data the impact Girl Shine has made, and we have some examples that we can share from our recent updates around early marriage that we had piloted in Uganda. Through the piloting in Uganda, we saw improvements in gender norms and attitudes for female and male caregivers, and we also saw improvements in the relationships between caregivers, as was reported by girls. And in this case, we saw the relationships had improved from 50% to 90% at post-test. That's quite significant. And we also saw improvements in girls' knowledge of where they could seek support if they were experiencing violence. So this had started at 1.5 places at pre-test and had increased to 4 places at post-test. So again, really, really positive improvements there. And then the testimonies that we received really shed light on how Girl Shine has impacted girls. So we had one girl that reported to us that the sessions have really helped her to avoid being forced into marriage and marrying someone who was not her choice. She shared that her uncle had wanted her to get married to a man who was not her choice, but she had refused because it was her right to choose her partner, and forcing her to marriage was a violation of her rights. And so that was after she had participated in Girl Shine. And then a female caregiver who also had participated in Girl Shine told us, I used to value the dowry we would get from the marriage, not thinking of the consequences of early marriage. But now I know the effects and won't allow my girls to get married early. So we have lots of stories like this that come from participants who have been through the Girl Shine process.
Wow. Thanks, Mehreen, for sharing. Those are, really powerful statements, and that speak to the impact of the program as well. And Rainy, you've been involved in the implementation of Girl Shine since the beginning in Bangladesh. And I'm sure you've seen lots of things. And I'm just wondering, what's your perspective on the impact you have seen from the program in the lives of the adolescent girls you work with and in the community?
Yeah, thank you so much, Maria. That's a very good question. So, in Bangladesh, the Girl Shine program is making a positive impact on adolescent girls and their caregivers through its evidence-based curriculum. Why I'm saying this is evidence-based curriculum, because to evaluate this program impact, we use a pre and post-program survey to measure changes in knowledge, attitudes, and behavior related to gender equality, GBV prevention, and others. So this survey has shown that the program is effective in improving girls' knowledge and attitude toward these topics. And also anecdotal evidence showing that this program has helped our adolescent caregivers gain a better understanding of adolescent girls' needs and how to provide a supportive environment during this transition period. Female caregiver also expressed that they gain an understanding of the adolescent girls' need and importance of the girls' empowerment. If I just want to give you the real best example of last year, it has been shown a positive impact in empowering adolescent girls and educating caregivers to create a supportive environment for them. The trained caregivers are also committed to supporting the girls in their own way through empowerment, and the graduate girls are now in the preparatory stage to act as mentor in the next cycle of the Girl Shine. In 2022, we aim to reach 2,500 adolescent girls, male and female caregivers from 16 camps, and successfully 2020 participants completed this program. Just would like to share actually a true story. So at one camp, it was the graduation ceremony following the end of a Gaussian cycle. So when we asked these graduating participants about the impact of the Gaussian program on their lives, one adolescent girl said that after completing the Gaussian module, she was able to stop her early marriage on her own and able to convince her family not to go for early marriage. So
Wow.
this story actually, this story actually made my day that day.
Yeah, that's so powerful to see the impact that this participating in this Girl Shine program will have on this girl's life forever. Thank you. And thanks also for sharing, the reach that this program has had in Bangladesh. 2,200 participants that have completed it is quite a wide reach. And I imagine that it's quite intensive also, since we've been discussing all the layers this program has, the adolescent girls, the mentors, the caregivers, the health workers, the caseworkers. Really powerful. Thank you. Now, I think that listening to you and to Rainy, maybe GBV practitioners are more enticed to work more closely with adolescent girls. So I'm just wondering, what would you say to our colleagues and partners that do want to work more closely with adolescent girls and possibly even implement Girl Shine in their context?
The first thing I would say is it's great that you want to work more closely with adolescent girls, and we don't have to necessarily do a standalone program like Girl Shine to improve our engagement for girls already. So there are things that we can be doing within our existing program to improve our reach for girls. So making sure that the spaces that we're offering are safe spaces for girls and girls feel comfortable in those spaces, and ensuring that we are offering activities and programming that meets the needs of girls and that girls are interested in. So that's the first thing I would say. Like, there are many things that we can do within our existing program to extend reach. And of course, having a tailored program like Girl Shine is ideal, but it's not the only thing that we can be doing with adolescent girls. And I would say that the best starting point for thinking about that, whether that's through your existing program or through doing something like Girl Shine, is really setting a strong foundation. And so this really comes from thinking about our outreach strategy, how we're engaging with girls, how we're building trust in the community, how we're informing the community about what we're offering, and really being intentional around that trust building and outreach component. And then the second thing I would say is it's really critical to talk to girls during this process. So in Girl Shine, we do this through quite a rigorous needs assessment with girls, so we can really understand what their challenges are and what their needs are and how we can tailor our programming to their needs. And oftentimes we forget to talk to girls when we're doing this type of programming, and we might just speak to their parents or speak to community leaders. It's really important to carve out the space to hear from girls directly, where you are holding focus group discussions with girls alone, so that their voices are not overpowered by older women, for example, and to really hear from them directly, because they will be the ones to guide you in terms of what type of programming they want to see and how they will be able to access it as well.
Great. Thanks so much. And now that we're wrapping up, I'm wondering if you could share with us kind of a closing thought, something that you want our listeners to take away.
So, from having worked with girls now for a long time and across many different contexts, one thing that always stands out for me is how insightful they are into their own challenges, and also with coming up with the solutions to these challenges themselves. So, one thing I would say, it's crucial to put girls at the center of your work. And I touched upon this already in the last question too. But the girls will be the ones that will guide you on what their needs are and the support and guidance that they will need to overcome challenges. So it's really important that we listen to that and we be an advocate for these girls, because these girls don't have many people advocating for them. So it really is a crucial role that we have to play.
And Rainy, could you provide us a closing thought, something that we can take away from your experience with the program and with working with adolescent girls?
Yeah, sure, Maria. I would be happy to give that. So, in conclusion, I would like to say that investing in adolescent girls is not only the right things to do, but it's also a smart investment for building stronger and more resilient communities. Programs like Girl Shine provide adolescent girls with that skills, knowledge, social networks, and self-confidence that need to protect themselves from gender-based violence and navigate adolescence with greater resilience. So, by empowering these adolescent girls, we can help break the cycle of poverty, gender inequality, and violence and pave the way for a brighter and more equitable future. We must continue to prioritize and invest in adolescent girls programming in humanitarian setting so that it can ensure that every girl has the opportunity to realize her full potential.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was really nice to speak to both of you.